Welcome back to another MOTOBOB video. You join me at Harley-Davidson's warehouse here in the UK, and this is the first Street Glide CVO for 2023 in the country. CVO, or Custom Vehicle Operations bikes, are their top models with no stone unturned in pursuit of building the ultimate Harley with their best engines, best spec components, and the latest tech too. And for these new bikes, it's a pretty significant update with big changes all across the bike. So in this video, I'll tell you everything that you need to know about it with a full walk around from nose to tail of the bike so we don't miss anything on this fantastic looking machine. So we'll start down here at the front with these very striking looking new wheels, which I think are one of my favorite details on the new CVOs. So you've got a 19-inch up front and an 18 at the rear, which is totally common for Harley's touring models. But what's different about these is they use a combo cast lace construction. So you've got a cast aluminium rim with those machine cut details on the side that give them a very distinctive look. But then laced to the edges, you've got regular wire spokes, which gives it a little bit of a more traditional look. Now this design allows them to run tubeless tires, and also they've got TPMS included, so tire pressure monitoring, which is a great feature on any touring bike. And then as for tires, we've got Dunlop's Harley-Davidson co-branded products with a D408 at the front and a D407 at the rear. So they're pretty much standard fare for big cruiser and tourer type bikes, so a little bit of dry and wet performance, and also with enough strength to withstand a decent amount of load. So this is a big old bike, and then imagine it with two up and the luggage loaded up. It's really pretty substantial. Now, like I say, with these CVO models, typically you get the more sporty and performance orientated gear on them, and so this particular bike gets radially mounted 4-pop BREMBO brake calipers, which are more like what you'd expect to find on a sporty naked or a sports bike. Now you've also got twin discs here, and they're a little bit bigger than the previous generation, so they're now up to 320mm instead of 300, and so that ought to help deliver a little bit more braking power. Up on the bars, you've got those nice chunky Harley levers, so I really do like the feel of those in the hand. And then at the rear, you've also got a pretty hefty braking setup. So this is also a 4-piston caliper from Brembo, and it's on a 300mm disc, so much larger than you'd typically expect to find on other styles of motorcycle. But this is a 380 kilogram bike when it's fully fueled up, and so you'll probably want plenty of power from the front and the rear in order to get it to stop quickly. That's presumably why they've fitted it with their latest cornering electronic link braking system, which is going to give you a little bit of the front and rear brake, regardless of whether you're only using the front brake lever or the rear brake pedal. Like I say, it's cornering sensitive, so that means it will use the lean data from its inertial measurement unit, and so any brake pressure it applies on your behalf should allow you to continue your current trajectory through the corner without chucking you off the road. It is also worth adding as well that any brake pressure that's automatically applied by this system is related to how much pressure you're putting into the lever or pedal. So the harder you brake, the more it's going to intervene, but also the less pressure you apply, the less it's going to intervene, which is ideal if you want to drag the rear brake, for example, just a little bit to stabilize the bike during like low speed maneuvers. Now moving up to the fork, and typically on Harleys you'd expect to find a right way up fork, but this bike gets a very chunky looking 47mm SHOWA upside down fork. The benefit of course being that the heavier part of the fork is at the top and the slimmer, lighter part is at the bottom, so that allows the suspension to do its job more easily. It allows it to respond quicker, and that should translate to better ride quality. Now there's 4.6 inches of travel at the front here, or 117mm, whereas at the rear we've got quite a bit less at 3 inches or 76mm. It might not sound like a lot, but that's actually 50% up on the rear shocks versus the previous gen, the 2022 Grand Touring models, and so clearly that's going to be welcome news if you are riding frequently on less well-surfaced roads, especially on a bike with this sort of riding position where a lot of your weight is back on the seat, and so big bumps, if it bottoms out, you really do feel them right up through your spine. Now the fork is non-adjustable, so that's going to be set, but the rear shocks, which are also from SHOWA, they get preload and rebound adjustability, and while you do have to pop the luggage off to get at those adjusters, there's a secondary preload adjuster that's hydraulic, and that's on the side of the bike there, and that gives you an extra £100 of quick compensation, so you can use that without tools to make a quick adjustment for fully loaded luggage, for example, but also maybe you could get away with a lightish passenger just for a short journey. Now moving up again, we've got the front fairing, and this has to be one of the most obvious and significant changes to the styling of these two new CVO bikes. Now this Street Glide gets the fork-mounted batwing style fairing with the single LED headlight, whereas the Road Glide gets the frame-mounted shark nose style fairing, and I think that's pretty much the most significant difference between the two. Of course it'll affect the styling a lot, but also the handling. I mean, you're going to feel the weight of this on the bars, and also any buffeting and wind might affect it through the bars as well. But I think for me the trade-off is worth it because this slightly more classic design is a bit more appealing to me. They have given it a little bit of a modern tweak though. The LED lighting certainly helps, and you've got these daytime running lights along the edges, and these also incorporate the indicators or turn signals, which makes it look very clean indeed. Now you'll probably also notice the new paint job, which is really quite striking, and there are two color options for the CVOs this year, with this one being the standard dark platinum with bright smoked satin pinstriping across all of the bodywork. Then you've got the black on the hardware and what they call a scorched chrome on some of the accents like the exhaust and the pushrod sleeves, so basically like a kind of gunmetal color. The other option you've got is the stunning looking whiskey neat and raven metallic two-tone, which has a bit of a retro vibe to it, and I think it looks absolutely spectacular for this style of bike. They say it's hand applied with the airbrushing and pinstriping, and you've also got some neat looking orange accents on some of the hardware, so I guess those factors contribute to the pretty substantial price of that paint upgrade, which is £6,400 on top of a bike that already costs £38,295. That, by my calculations, brings the total cost up to £44,695, and so I think it's fair to say that that's safely out of reach for most bikers, and you probably aren't going to be seeing many of these on the road, let alone the orange one. Now a quick word on aerodynamics. They say they've done a lot of work versus the 2022 models, both a combination of CFD or computational fluid dynamics, which is basically like a wind tunnel simulation in software, but also some proper actual wind tunnel work as well, and they're claiming the result is a 60% reduction in helmet buffeting, which is, you know, a big deal because that's undoubtedly one of the most annoying things about doing a significantly long touring style ride. Some of the tweaks of course include the overall shape of the fairing, which is a little more sporty looking, but actually it's had some positive practical effects. You've got some adjustability as well, so there's a central vane here which you can move up and down, some flaps on the fork legs, and they say that that allows the rider to dial in the air pressure in the cockpit to suit their, you know, particular riding gear or helmet style to minimize that buffeting. It's also worth adding there are some variations in height for the windscreen in the parts catalogue, with the tallest being a 10-incher. They recommend that for anyone over 5'9". I'm actually 5'9", so I'll probably be between this and the 8-inch screen. But yeah, for anyone above that height, they claim a 25% reduction with the 10-inch screen on visor pressure, and so for 248 quid, that might be something worth looking into if you're planning on doing some proper long distance riding. Now into the cockpit, and we've got a massive 12.3-inch display here, so much bigger than the previous gen with their 6.5-inch screen, and also that's a diagonal measure, so the actual screen space in terms of area, they say, is up by 400%. And this thing gets the absolute works, so it's touch sensitive even if you're wearing gloves, but yet it has a fingerprint reducing coating as well as anti-glare. It's also got home link enabled, so you can talk to an automatic garage door and you can open it up without having to get off the bike. It's got Wi-Fi for updates, built-in radio with AM, FM and DAB, voice commands, Bluetooth connectivity for media playback and navigation, and there's also a neat little stash here for your phone, which is brilliant. It looks like it's big enough to take probably a small tablet. Might not sound like a big deal, but my phone's an iPhone Pro Max, so pretty big, and especially if it's in this sort of chunky case, quite often on bikes it won't fit in the phone stash, BMWs and stuff like that, but absolutely no problems here. It'll fit in, and there's even room for a couple of other bits. This thing also has a new operating system, so the new visual layout is very clean and easy to read, and you've also got a choice of layouts, so there's Cruise, Sport and Tour, and they prioritize the most appropriate data for that particular style of riding, and you can also add your own little widgets around the edge, so specific readouts like tire pressure monitoring, compass heading, fuel range, outside temperature and more. Also through the screen you can manage all the rider aids. This thing gets the absolute works. Like I say, they're very performance orientated, so the rider aids are a little bit more like a sports bike or sporty naked than they are a big tourer. There's 3 riding modes of road, sport and rain, and you've also got the custom slot so you can dial in the settings yourself. And within that you've got cornering ABS, the link braking, cornering traction control, cornering drag torque slip control, and vehicle hold control for those tricky hill starts. So absolutely loads of tech in the cockpit here. You can also use Apple CarPlay to get your favorite messaging and navigation apps and music and podcasts. And if you don't want to use a headset, you can blast those out through the Rockford Fosgate design speakers, 2 in the cockpit here and 2 in the top of the saddlebags, and those are upgradable as well. It's got a 500 watt amp, which I reckon should be enough volume. Now moving down to the tank here, we've got another opportunity to appreciate this very nice looking paint job. And actually the shape of the tank has been redesigned along with some of the other bodywork, and it looks a little bit more chiseled and sporty and aggressive. As for fuel capacity, well, this comes in at 22.7 litres, and so that should be enough for about 380 kilometers or 235 miles between fuel stops, according to the official consumption figures, and hopefully we'll get a chance to test that out at some point. Now I did say this is quite a hefty bike, but it's actually 31 pounds or 14 kilograms down on the previous generation, so pretty substantial weight savings. And one of the measures they've used to achieve that is the fuel tank, which uses a lighter gauge steel, and also the triple clamps as well. They've been made significantly lighter. Now the engine on this thing is a bit of a beast. It's the 121 cubic inch version of their Milwaukee 8 V-twin, and that's the biggest version you can currently get sort of factory installed into a bike, only beaten by the monstrous 135 cubic inch crate engine, but that will cost you about $8,000. But still, you know, that's pretty much a litre in each cylinder here. 121 cubic inches translates to 1,982 cc, and also it's packed with new tech and performance upgrades versus the 117. So they're saying 8% more torque and 9.5% more horsepower, which brings it up to 115 horses of 4,500 RPM and boatloads of torque, so 189 Newton meters right down at 3,000 RPM, which is exactly what you'd want on a big tourer like this. Loads of shove and nice and low in the revs. On top of that, you'll see VVT on the side here, so that means it actually gets a variable valve timing system, and it can rotate the crankshaft through 20 degrees, so that really allows them to dial it in for fuel efficiency and torque in the lower revs, but also open it up and make it a bit freer flowing at the top for peak power. They say it gives a much better spread of grunt across the entire rev range, but also 3 to 5% better fuel efficiency versus the 117 bikes in their lineup. Now in addition, you've got a new cylinder head design, new intake tract, a much bigger air filter and airbox there, and a new performance exhaust design, which we'll have a listen to in a minute. Plus there's a new cooling system design with extra channels in the cylinder heads, and you've also got the new radiator down at the front, and it's been placed there strategically to keep the rider cool, so the fans blow the hot air under the bike as opposed to up around the rider, where many bikes do actually have the radiator. Now ergonomically, this bike feels supremely comfortable. There's a new handlebar design. It's wider and flatter before, and they say that gives you a bit more of a natural angle in your arm, and there's also 27 degrees of adjustability. Heated grips are standard as well, along with 2 pre-wired connection points for heated gear under the seat. The front brake lever is now reach adjustable to match the rider's hand size, and then these new bikes get a new seat design with different padding. I mean, it looks beautiful as well with the stitching and details, but the idea is it rotates your hips into a position that puts less strain on your back and neck. Seat height comes in at 715mm unladen for both models, which is nice and low and makes it easy to plant your feet, which is exactly what you want on a substantial bike like this. I'm loving the floorboards as well, plenty of space for your feet, and also they've got some really nice machine details on. These feel super premium along with the grips, and then yeah, a decent perch for the passenger, although I think I'd probably invest in some floorboards as well, and some grab rails, and maybe a little backrest just to make it a proper couch experience on the back. Now at the back here we've got the luggage, and again these have been redesigned so they've got a slightly different shape. You've also got the beautiful matched paintwork as well, and the other benefit of this redesign is you actually get a little bit more capacity, so 31 litres each, which of course is 62 combined, which should be enough for some light touring maybe, or weekends away. But I think if you want to turn it into a proper full-on tourer, you'll have to look at the top box in the parts catalogue, although at a smidge over £2,000 with all the other passenger upgrades I mentioned, you know, you're probably starting to look at like close to 50 grand. Now at the very back here we've got these super neat looking tail lights. These are a new design as well, and you'll see they also integrate the indicators too, so very clean again and nicely designed. That just leaves us at the very tip with the exhaust, which we'll have a little listen to now. So look, a massive thanks to Harley for setting up the chance to come and have a look at this incredible bike. Yes, it's a lot of money, but I think with all the stuff I've shown you in this video, you can see a lot of details gone into it, and it really does feel like the peak in terms of touring luxury. If you want to see some of my other favorite Harleys for this new model year, then I'll link to a video on the screen, a little list I made, so give it a watch and let me know which your favorites are down in the comments. A massive thanks for watching today, and we'll see you in the next one.